Hey guys, it's Quana, and I'm back again with another review. We're here to discuss The Handmaid's Tale, season 3, episode 10, entitled Witness. So let's dig right on in. All right, so this episode picks up immediately after the last episode, Heroic, where we see June and Aunt Lydia arriving back to the Lawrence house, returning her just in time for her ceremony that she's never had with Commander Lawrence. But of course, Aunt Lydia doesn't know that. And we see that she's limping. I can't recall like exactly what, other than the fact that she's just been in general forced to kneel all of this time, but we see her limping out of pain, probably some hip problems from basically kneeling for the last like month and a half, 2 months. And so we see Aunt Lydia being extremely patient with her, calling her a good girl. And it's kind of funny because in the scene, visibly on June's face, you can see still resilience and resistance, but she's saying all of the right things to make Aunt Lydia believe that she's now going to be compliant. She returns her to the Lawrence family, where we see that the theme of this episode is going to be crazy. And, I know we're on this whole mental health and mental wellness thing where we're not supposed to use words like crazy, but I'm sorry, this episode was cray cray. From everything from the new rules, and like how they keep houses orderly and decorated, that have been established in the time that June's been gone. And I like the idea that we do see some things that have changed. So we see the passage of time, but we see when she walks into Commander Lawrence's study, books are stacked in this weird, strange pattern, and all over the place, so that he's kind of become unhinged. We see that Mrs. Lawrence has become even more unhinged than normal, and there's nothing that anything that can be done. And in fact, the Martha says she's resorting now to throwing things, and she's got a cut on her ear from where she's thrown a teacup at her. And at first, I didn't notice when she was rinsing out the dishes that she brought down, it was that broken teacup that she just thrown at her. And then, of course, we see that June herself has become crazy and unhinged, because even though she has this new resiliency that she wants to save the children of Gilead and get them all out, as she keeps saying, like she's not doing anything methodically. She says that she's going to come up with a plan, but she's being very fast and loose with all of this, confiding in anyone and everyone, not having really learned a lesson and not learning how to really be stealthy in her attempts to free the children of Gilead. But we'll get more on that later. So she returns to her normal routine. She doesn't have a walking partner, and all the other handmaids are terrified of her, as they should be. We see that the Martha has gotten scones back from, I guess, the last attempt to reach out to them, and scones mean no. We see that she's not really getting any assistance from the other handmaids, but she's still going to attempt to do what she can. And so she goes to Commander Lawrence and is like, I need you to give me a truck. I need you to give me information on the other children. And he's looking at her like, girl, no, you crazy. Like, you're not about to get us killed up in here. And so eventually she goes into Commander Lawrence's study, and who comes in but Mrs. Lawrence. And it's kind of interesting because we see her trying to retrieve, it looks like maybe a book or something. We know that the women of Gilead are not allowed to read. And so she says, oh, well, what you're looking, she says, well, what are you looking for? And she's like, I'm looking for information on all the children. She's like, oh, that's down in the basement. Come on, no problem. And I just love how innocent, in her craziness, Miss Lawrence really is, because I think we're supposed to get the sense that she's kind of the one wife. And let's be honest, okay, let's take a pause. All of the wives, to some degree, even though they're benefiting from the system of Gilead, they themselves have also been victims to the system of Gilead. They've lost all of their rights and privileges in the attempt to maintain their husband's authority. And I think there's definitely a message there, that a very pointed message to the women who voted in the 2016 election, to say, yeah, you voted with the idea of keeping your husbands in power, but at the same time, you're forfeiting all of your rights and freedoms. That, it's, and you have to say that, guys. I mean, I know we try to keep things kind of apolitical here on this channel, but that's a very pointed message, that as men achieve more power, because they already are on top, that there are elements of that where women may be stripped of their power, and what are you going to do about it? We're losing the ground in this world. There's no real equality. So they go down to the basement, and eventually they luck upon these boxes with all of the information on every single handmaid, and in the little files are descriptions of the children's original name, their new name, and what's happened to them. So we know that the one handmaid, who I always forget her name, but the one who really helps June with like the information, and she's working with the underground, we learn that her child is safe, and she learns his name. But we also unfortunately find out that Janine's son, Caleb, has passed away in a traffic accident. So she finds out all this information about where the children are, what their new names are, and everything. Okay, so then we get a scene takeaway. We move on to back to DC. Well, I guess he's here now. I don't know if he's still in DC, but he's there where they are in the village or the town of Commander Lawrence. Is that the new commander, played by Christopher Maloney, who I always forget his name, but we're going to just call him Commander Stabler, because let's be basic, Christopher Maloney at this point in time, I'm so sorry, but you're still Stabler, all of us. We all want you to come back and be Stabler again. And so you see Fred, Serena Joy, and Commander Stabler, and they're talking about gaining more ground, about what can be done to implement more power. They're just basically talking about the power dynamics. And it's kind of interesting because we see Serena Joy in this scene, drinking with the men, talking with the men, certainly having more insight than what she should have. And so she's kind of playing it fast and loose as well with the amount of power that her husband allows her to have, because that has gotten her in trouble in the past, i.e. her finger being cut off. And we even see a very pointed look from Commander Stabler, that she starts talking and she starts asking Fred questions, and he's looking at her like side eye, major side eye, like, you're not supposed to know any of this. You're over here talking, just sit back and listen. And it's kind of funny because I don't really know if he's intrigued by her or if he's just kind of sitting back quietly so that he can use all of this information against them. And I kind of think it's the latter, but it could be the former, who knows. So ultimately, Fred reveals his hand, and his hand in this is that he believes that Commander Lawrence isn't really down for the cause, and he has had all these handmaids and none of them have produced an heir, and so we need to make sure that things are going down the way they should be going down in the Lawrence household. Excuse me one moment. So the next thing we find out, as June has been kind of going down to the basement getting all this information, so she's finally now gathering intel, and the Martha comes and gets her, and she's got the little ceremony pillow, and she's like, hey, they want you in the sitting room. And so she goes into the sitting room and she sits, and you kind of see her face is like, oh sugar, what's going on? And so she's directing the Marthas, because they've never, as long as they've been in the Lawrence household, they've not had to witness a ceremony, so they don't know what to do. And so she's reminding them where to stand, and she's kind of almost like she's orchestrating her own ceremony. And this is where I'm going to talk about this more a little later, but we talked last week about how they're trying to craft and reclaim her heroic arc, and make us feel empathy and sympathy for her again, and renewed allegiance with June, so that we're not hating her, because she is our protagonist. And so in her orchestrating the scene, we see a sense of her vulnerability. And it's kind of crazy, right? Because she's the rape victim, but she's now got to orchestrate her own rape, in a sense, so that it doesn't get them all killed. So this is the scene that we got in the promo last week. Commander Stabler, Fred, and Serena Joy are there, and they're there to witness or to at least be in the house when the ceremony goes down to make sure that it's actually going down. They've brought the little armed guard there. They've got Aunt Lydia there, and even Aunt Lydia is like, yeah, we haven't done this in a while. And so they start the ceremony. You can see that Commander Lawrence is very unhinged. He's misplaced things. And he's going over the words, but he's definitely like rejecting this whole thing. They get upstairs. He's trying to keep his wife calm. She's falling apart. Like, what is going on? Why do we have to do this? And he has to put her in a separate room so they can conduct the ceremony. He's trying to think of a way to get out of it. And June is ultimately like, they're gonna examine me, so we have to do this. We can't just sit in this room and pretend like we did something that we didn't do. They're going to check me to make sure that we did the ceremony. So you're gonna have to be a big boy and pull your britches down and come on over here. And it's so sad. And I think it's kind of strange. It was kind of strange and surreal for me watching this, because the first time we saw June having to endure the ceremony, like I cried. Like the scene where Serena Joy is holding her hands, I broke down. And in this dynamic, we see that June is in charge, and so although my heart went out to her, my heart went out to Mrs. Lawrence, because we really do see that Mr. Lawrence, even though he's the designer of this system, we see that ultimately he may not have been completely on board with it from the jump, and certainly not this element of it. And so he's never probably made her have to endure this, and she is falling apart. And so I love that sense of vulnerability that we get from her, juxtaposed to Serena Joy, who is now kind of owning her duplicity in this. She is very broken and weak, Mrs. Lawrence, and she is not as complicit in the rape of this, and it's going to come back, I think, to bite them all in the butt. Like, I think that she's quiet now, but remember that she's unhinged and she's a loose cannon, and I think that this is going to come back and be a rift between the two of them. So they complete the ceremony. The doctor comes in, examines June. Aunt Lydia is trying to comfort her, and she's like, "Yay, we're gonna get another baby, hallelujah, all that good stuff." And so then we get to the next day, back to the normal routine of going to the store, being escorted, and now June has a plan. Well, in the midst of all of that, Commander Lawrence comes back, and he's like, I'm gonna, for what you did for us. He comes back, he gives her some birth control. She's like, I can't take that birth control. If I take the birth control, they'll rip me apart with dogs. Like, literally, they'll pull my pieces apart. So no, we can't do that. We're gonna just have to pray that it doesn't take, and hopefully I don't get pregnant, and hopefully we get out. And he's like, if I get you what you need, I want you to get my wife out of here. And she's like, okay, I can do that. So he's like, I'm gonna get you a truck. So then she goes back to the store, and she's like, boom, I got a plan. I know where the kids are. We got a truck. We can do this. We just got to get across the border. Now, I don't know how she's planning on getting all the other pieces together, like who's gonna drive the truck, what's inside of the truck that's going to be like the reason why they would be taking the truck wherever they're going to take it across the border and then getting across the border. But she does say to him, you can come with us. Like, if you give them something valuable, something they want, like children, then you could come with us. Now, the interesting part of this plan is that if they get children out, it doesn't resolve anything from the handmaid's perspective. And so I definitely think that we're going to see June orchestrate this attempt to get out, but I don't know if she herself is going to be a part of it, right? Like, we're going to have to somehow see the destruction of Gilead, but more on that later. So she goes to the store. She tells the one handmaid, I know where your son is. And so she's like, boom. She tells her about her son, that his name is this, and he's blonde. And she's like, yeah, his dad was blonde. Okay, boom, I'm going to help you. And then Janine is there, and Janine was like, I'm strong too. I can help too. And she's just so precious. Like, I just hope Janine lives, or she has like a killer scene where she goes out with a bang, because she's just so precious. So then ultimately Janine asks about her son, and the one moment where we see the facade and that craziness and that very reckless behavior kind of from that June's been exhibiting fall apart is she makes the very calculated decision to lie to Janine. Janine is not strong enough to be told the truth about her child, so she crafts this story that her child and his family have been relocated to California, which we know from the guy who used to be on Parenthood. I'm gonna forget his name, but he was Joel on Parenthood when he told Serena about like Hawaii. So certainly California, while it's part of the mainland states, is a better place to be in, probably. And she says he's there, he lives on the beach, he's good, he's happy. And so she's smiling, she's like, okay, I'm ready for this, like I'm gonna help. And so we get this plan that comes together. And then at the very end of the episode, remember back when I said that they got the baskets from the other Marthas with scones, and scones meant no? Well, the Martha has put the word out that we're gonna try to rescue the kids. Who wants to help? And June walks in, and you see her eyes go really huge, and she looks around. The room pans around, and the Martha is there, and she's in shock. And I'm gonna have to remember her name, guys. Don't let me forget to remember that girl's name. But she looks around, and there are muffins everywhere, and she's like, muffins mean yes. And I was like, yes, because I love a good muffin. It's like, I hadn't had a muffin in a while. I was like really tempted to wake up in the middle of the night and make some muffins after watching this. So yeah, so that's just a quick recap from the episode. Now, a couple of things. I think while this did move the needle toward June becoming that protagonist that we need again, it was kind of interesting the choice they made to play her so kind of crazy. And even Elizabeth Moss mentioned in one of the extra scenes on Hulu that she described this moment as crazy too, which I thought that was the first thing that I thought about. So the fact that she's calling her Crazy June as well, I was like, okay, well that lets me know that I'm not off target here. So I thought that was quite interesting, that a decision that they made. And I really want to see in the next couple of scenes, while June is very calculated, I want to see her play that calculated, stealthy person, because that's what she's going to need to do in order to really rescue these children. She can't just keep doing things like she's been doing it, right? The other thing that I want to see is how this is going to play out with Commander Lawrence and his wife, because I don't think that she is going to be able to stay stable having witnessed what she has, because she still has maintained kind of her independence even as her freedom has been stripped away, and her craziness has kind of allowed her to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And ultimately, guys, I don't know about you, but I definitely think that while they're trying to establish June as the stronger protagonist, I think we're peeling back the layers here, and I think we're seeing where Serena Joy is becoming one antagonist that we're going to have. Like, she's going to be willing to do whatever she has to do to get Nicole back. And we might see a moment where perhaps they're able to get Hannah out, but then Nicole comes back. And so that may be the trigger that keeps June here. Ultimately, guys, I think that Commander Stabler is the one to watch. I think he is going to emerge as our big bad, because right now it's been kind of the system of Gilead, right? But it's been kind of Fred and Serena Joy. And we've gotten the various complexities of their character, and so it's really hard to have a villain that you in some ways empathize with. I think we're going to see Commander Stabler emerge as like the token big bad of the series, perhaps with an epic showdown with him, or where he witnesses something in episode 12, and that takes us into the next season, and then he emerges as that force to be reckoned with in the next season. So I think that that's the one to watch. Tell me what you guys think. So I enjoyed the episode. It didn't have anything ultra climactic, although I was really kind of glad they didn't go with the group orgy scene like I thought that they might have been trying to go with, like, oh, we're gonna all do the ceremony together. That would have been very, very weird. But I did enjoy this episode because we get back to the heart of things, and ultimately we knew that there was going to be a moment where Commander Lawrence was going to have to perform the ceremony with June. He wasn't going to keep being able to avoid that. You know, at some point it was going to happen. So I'm glad that they're tying up some of these loose ends of things that had been sown early on, because I said they were going to need to do that in order to drive the plot forward. So I'm really glad about that. Ultimately, I do want to see some of the other characters either emerge as being more to the forefront, because obviously, like, I can't even remember their names. Janine is the only one at this point now that I really know in terms of handmaids, and so I feel like we need more. We need more people to care about. And I would like to see Rita escape. I love Rita, guys. We saw Rita for like 2 seconds in this episode, and I love Rita. Rita is close to my heart because she started off very salty and mean, and then she kind of really took care of June. And so I love Rita, and I hope that Rita gets free as well. But yeah, so it was a good episode. Not my top five, but it was a strong episode for the season. I think it gets us back on track for where we need to be for episodes 11 and 12. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the season plays out, and I hope you are too. And until next time, guys, toodles!